Tanya Berger-Wolf, Director of the Translational Data Analytics Institute at The Ohio State University. I'm also Professor of Computer Science and Engineering, Electrical and Computer Engineering, Evolution, Ecology, and Organismal Biology, as well as the co-founder director of Wild Book Project at nonprofit Wild Me. And I'll talk today about crowdsourcing conservation and humans combating extinction together. According to the most recent UN report, we're losing biodiversity at an unprecedented scale. And the problem is, we don't even know what we're losing, how many of the animals and the plants are there for different species. The International Unit of Conservation of Nature, Red List, the official organization that keeps track of the endangered status of species, the one that when we say that the species are endangered, it's because they determine that they are, currently has about 160,000 species that they keep track of. And the goal is to get to currently have about 100,000, and the goal is to get to 160,000 by the end of 2020. And that's not doable without serious computational scaling and new ways of getting that data, because of those 160,000, about 16,000 are data deficient. And these are not some obscure species. These are killer whales, orcas, iconic species. They're data deficient. We don't know how many there are, where they're going, and what's their population status, whether they're increasing, decreasing, or stable. About 46,000 more. That population trend is unknown. Again, polar bears are in that category. Even when we do know that trend, it is a very generic trend, even for some iconic species such as African elephants. When the numbers are known and the status is known, quite often it is like for whale sharks, the largest fish on Earth. It says that there are 103,000 with a standard error between 27,000 and 180,000 about. That's a very scientific way of saying we have no clue. So how do we get a clue? How do we know how many African elephants there are and how fast does the population decline? Where do the whales go? How many bobcats are left in the world? And how many turtles survive to adulthood? We can put radio colors or track these animals in various ways. So the Great Elephant Census used airplanes and scans over the entire continent. But it took 2 years and $8 million to get some pretty wide confidence interval numbers. That is not scalable and not replicable. And we do not have enough radio colors to put on all the animals out there. And it is a very labor-intensive and quite often dangerous for the animal process. So what do? Today, the most readily available, most abundant source of information about anything, from what we have for lunch and what we do with our friends to what are the animals that we're seeing out there, are photographs and videos, images of the world. These images are collected by scientists and field assistants, camera traps, drones, as well as tourists going on safaris and whale watching tours and posting their information on social media. So how do we take all these millions and millions of photographs and find the information that we need? How do we find all the elephants and all the zebras and turtles and whales in all of these millions of pictures? So we built a system which can take all of these pictures, find which ones contain animals, and identify not only species, but down to individual animals. So we can tell you not only that this is the gray zebra, but we can tell you, we can compare it to all the other gray zebras and tell you that this is Zippy the zebra.
That's an amazing amount of photos. I wonder, how do they sort through them all and then identify individual animals? Each image is processed through a series of convolutional neural networks and matching algorithms. The first network determines whether there are any animals of interest, in this case, zebras. The next set of networks localize each animal in its own subregion and classify the species. At this point, background segmentation is performed on the subregion to generate a rough mask of the zebra. Once this is done, key points are extracted from the zebra and feature descriptors are built. These descriptors serve as a sort of fingerprint that can be compared for similarity against previously identified individual animals in a large database. The scores from this comparison allow the system to decide which animals are the most likely matches. When the match has high enough confidence, it's accepted immediately. Matches that have lower confidence are shown to a human expert, who then makes the final decision.
And we can do it for any striped, spotted, wrinkled, notched species, any species that have an individually identifiable pattern, or even the shape of a whale's fluke or the dorsal fin of a dolphin. And with information on when and where the images were taken, we can really start getting insight about the species. And so we built a system called Wildbook, which really does track the information, take photographs, and allows us to get insight about populations, such as population count, birth and death dynamics, species range, social interactions and species interactions, and even a social network of the species that are social, such as sperm whales, which are shown here. We also using social media. We built an AI bot, an intelligent bot that takes the videos from YouTube and that people post of their vacation. These are all publicly available videos, in this case of whale sharks, and searches for the videos of particular species, finds the frame that contains the animal, and once we uniquely identified, the bot then uses the information also from the title and when and where the image was taken to add that sighting to Wildbook, and then post in the comments the information that we found. Hey, at 2 minutes 46 seconds we found this whale shark MXA 700 in your video. Here's everything we know about it. And the most common response that we get from people, wow, this is amazing. When notice there's that posting of the YouTube video here, of the YouTube video sighting of this animal that came by just publicly found video of the animal. This is a page of the whale shark Wildbook. At the bottom, there are all the scientists and conservation organizations that have this specific individual in their database. So because these are global species, there is not one project, not one organization that know everything, even about one individual. And so that really fosters collaborations among scientists and conservation organizations. So today we have close to 12,000 individually identified whale sharks in Wildbook, contributed through 75 plus sightings from more than 8,700 citizen scientists and volunteers, as well as 212 research and conservation projects, and one very clever AI bot. In fact, since we started it, the contributions of the social media sightings are more than half of all the human contributors combined. So our AI bot finds these videos and adds them to Wildbook, and that now constitutes more than half of the data of the visual data about these animals. In fact, it is based on Wildbook for whale sharks data that the numbers in the IUCN Red List for this species were adjusted, and so the official population numbers now come from whale shark data. Not only that, based on that data, the conservation status of the species that prior to that was vulnerable was adjusted to be endangered. It's not that the species are doing worse, it's just we didn't know well enough how badly they were doing. So they're endangered species, and the population trend was reclassified from stable to decreasing. The most comprehensive study on the biology of whale sharks was published from the data from Wildbook, based on the data from Wildbook, and co-authored by 36 authors who met through the pages of Wildbook. Remember that at the bottom of the page, there are all the scientists and conservationists who have that individual in their database. That's how these people met. And today we have more than 30 species and growing. By the end of the year, we're scaling it to hundreds of species. Wild books spanning from turtles and seals to giraffes and zebras. And currently working on a wild book for this very bizarre and wonderfully unique species, the weedy and leafy sea dragon. That's a seahorse. They're indicator species for the coral reefs, and so and endangered ones, and therefore very important to know what's going on with them. The species of wild book span the entire globe, and both marine and terrestrial. And it is through the lenses of individual cameras that we're truly seeing now the biodiversity of the globe and getting data. In fact, Wildbook powered a unique event for the first time in January 2016, where hundreds of people all over Kenya were taking pictures of the endangered Grevy zebra. So this is the Great Grevy Zebra, the Great Gravy's Rally, an event intended to use photographs from ordinary people to count the entire species, to provide census of the entire species. From school kids and northern rangers to the US ambassador to Kenya, Bob Godek at the time, and tourists with telephoto camera took more than 40,000 images of zebras, and we've processed and identified all the animals in those pictures. And that covers, the Kenyan population of Grevy zebras covers more than 95% of the species. So that's a significant part. We've identified that there was 2,352 animals, plus minus a very, very tight margin confidence interval of 92. And in fact, it was so good and the confidence interval was so tight that Kenya Wildlife Service asked us to do it again in 2018. And so in 2018, more than 1,000 people participated, and we got more than 70,000 images of zebras, and the final count was 2,800, plus minus about 150. Kenya Wildlife Service also asked us to add to the count another species, reticulated giraffe. And this is by far my most favorite giraffe in the world, reticulated giraffe in the world. We call it emo giraffe. Notice the heart and a smiley face right there at the bottom of the neck. And it's easily identifiable, right? And in fact, this past January, we ran this event again because Kenya Wildlife Service now wants to have it as a biennial, as in every 2 years event, where ordinary people are driving and powering conservation. And so we held this event in 2020. We're still processing the numbers, and if the number of zebras crosses 3,000, then this will happen. This will have happened for the first time since 1970. So we're really paying attention and really making sure that that all the biases are accounted for and our numbers are correct. And talking about biases, we really looked at our events because these are photographs taken by people that are driving around the countries but staying on the roads. So we looked at the spatial bias, and we looked also at the photographs, the animals that people are photographing, and how many of the photographs were useful, how many were resightings. And so if you look at this unique sightings versus total sightings curve of the Great Gravy's Rally in the bottom, this is a 2-day event. By mid-morning of the second day, the unique sightings curve was essentially flat. There were no new animals that were seen of all the photographs that were taken. That essentially we've seen all the animals that were out there. And this is 2016. In the following 2 years, comparing it to the data of 2018, we now know that we've seen more than 90% of the animals in the population, which is close to 90% of the animals in the species. So this is an amazing coverage of the species. And not only that, but because the confidence intervals are so tight, we saw that from 2016 to 2018, the population indeed has grown. So from about 2350 plus minus 93, the population has grown to 2812 plus minus 163. And so we can definitely say that that nationally the population is growing, and also county by county the population has grown in the 2 years. Not only that, we can compare the fraction of non-adults in the population, and scientists are saying that there should be at least 30% of non-adults to sustain the population. If you look at the blue numbers, the blue column, which is 2016, 2018 was in January, so we don't know yet how many will have been born in the year. But for the 2016, we're seeing that all but one county have reached that mark of 30% of non-adults in the population. And the one county where they are many fewer, they're about 15% of the population, the culprit, and this is where the interactive audience would have been Q&A, the little quiz time, are lions. Meru County is doing such a great job with lion conservation that there are too many lions per zebra. And so lions are just seeing the baby zebras walking by, and they're like, okay, barcoded snap. Great, I'll take one. And so, but based on this data, based on the numbers that have come from this, from the image analysis and this crowdsourced event, the numbers were tight enough and confident enough that they allowed the government officials to institute a program which would have been and remains pretty controversial, but of lion contraception, to really put the predator and prey in balance. And we're seeing now the results that indeed it has worked. Based on these numbers, Kenya Wildlife Service and the 5 governors of the counties that have gravy zebras signed on to the proclamation of the Endangered Species Management Act, which put resources, money, people, and land to protect this species, this iconic Kenyan species. Simon Gitau, the Kenya Wildlife Service Assistant Director in charge of Mountain Conservation Area, said that data is wealth, but knowledge is power. And so it is indeed that these data and this effort translated directly into money and resources and programs. So not only it gives us the power, but it also gives really brings the responsibility of the numbers that we're producing. And in fact, we've trained Kenyans to use the system, so it is Kenyans who are powering conservation. Samgita also said that when we delivered the numbers for the first time, that it shows the power of citizen science and machine learning for conservation. And there are many firsts in that sentence, because it's the first time that it is ordinary people that contributed this data, which is why they were then willing to commit resources. It is the first time that Kenya Wildlife Service used certification of an organization outside of Kenya, but it also for the first time that they used the words machine learning in a sentence, and continue to really build this computational policy making with the participation of the entire country in the process. The IUCN Red List entry for gravy zebra is the numbers today are also based on this event, and the population is updated. The population numbers are updated based on Wild Book entries. But if we're using photographs, not only from camera traps and drones, but from social media, how do we know that we're really getting good numbers out of it? We could check the biases when we're taking photographs from people driving around the country and told where to photograph the animals, when it was an intentional event. But what about these YouTube videos and Flickr pictures and Facebook and Instagram posts and iNaturalist contributions? So we looked at the social media, what we're getting from social media posts. But before I even get there, I want to bring attention to the problem of posting geotagged images of endangered species on social media. What is gold for scientists and conservation managers is also incredibly useful source of information for poachers and wildlife criminals. And even though the signs are there everywhere to turn off your geotag function and to not post images on social media, or be careful when you're posting, most people are not even aware that they're doing it, that they're posting geotagged images and don't know how to turn off their geotag function. In fact, just this year in January, in South Africa, people posted images of social media in Kruger National Park of elephants, and within hours there was a poaching attempt. In 2018, 71 elephants were killed for their ivory at Kruger National Park. So the problem is only growing. In collaboration with Ross Anderson from Cambridge University, we put a position paper outlining the challenges of sharing geotagged images of endangered species, as well as possible solutions. And it was presented as a keynote at the 2018 UCINIX conference, Privacy for Tigers. But if we're going to use images of animals from social media, the big problem, in addition to the security and privacy aspect, and I'm talking about privacy of animals in this case, there's also bias. So we have the true population, which is out there, let's say zebras. The first bias comes of having a human or a camera trap or any recording device to be there in the first place, at the right time to be able to see it. And that is a bias that has been well studied, both in the context of camera traps and drones, as well as other sampling approaches and human observers. The second bias comes from the photo capture bias, from the human seeing the animals and then deciding to actually take a picture, because majority of the photographs, as we pointed out, these are just people's vacation photos, and they were not asked to take it for science or for conservation. And we've done some preliminary studies where we've Field Assistant has gone on the safari, 2-hour safari, with people that were noting down how many animals of each species there were at each stop, and then we compared it to what people actually took pictures of. And on the same drive, there were people that took 500 pictures in 2 hours, and there were people who took 4. Okay. Some were birders, and all they took pictures of birds, and others took pictures of every zebra and impala that they saw, because that was their first safari. So there is a big bias there. Then there is bias of deciding to post having taken those photographs, deciding to post on social media, and which social media, and what are the APIs that these social platforms give for data collection, and what are the rate controls that they have, and how we're building the model of the population given those photographs, given that we've obtained from social media, and produce the population estimate. So all of these biases, ultimately, what we're interested in is perhaps not to control for every aspect, every step in this pipeline, but to really mitigate the error in the estimate from the entirety of this process. So we've done some of the studies, and this is first we approached as in sort of the straightforward way. Is it at all a learnable problem? Can we at all predict which images would be shared on social media? So we took photographs from the Great Gravis Rally, from these events that people have taken during these events, and we conducted a massive Amazon Mechanical Turk study, asking people repeatedly over collections of images. For every image, would you share it on social media? So some of them are pretty obvious. The ones on the left, clearly most people would not share, and the ones on the right, most people would actually share. And so we asked these repeatedly over and over again, and we took several features, such as biological features, the species, the individual, age, age and sex, as well as the time of day, and so on. And then we looked at EXIF information, so metadata about the image itself, and then beauty features that were developed by others in the context of people sharing photographs in general. That's about symmetry, color balance, and so on. And so it turns out that we can predict with high accuracy most methods, but logistic regression does really well, whether a given image will be shared on social media. But the problem is, it's not the answer that we seek. Even if we know for every image whether it will be shared on social media, even with high probability, what we want is the inverse of this problem. So, but it did tell us that it is a learnable problem, that there is no animal bias. We also looked at the collections of images, so not only images of individual animal, because we thought that, if you have in your SD card 500 pictures of zebras, you might share a few, but a few of them. But if you have only 3 pictures of zebras and then maybe 500 pictures of impala, you probably will share. You will share perhaps all 3 of them. We didn't know. So we took all the pictures taken on a particular trip, and the output in this case is estimating the probability not of an individual image, but of the entire shared album. And again, looking at the same features of bio, EXIF, and beauty, and looking at the collection features of the number of animals in the picture, and the number of animals in the SD card, and so on and so forth. And the only thing that really made a difference, was a significant feature, was what was the position of the image on the SD card. People pay a lot more attention to the ones that are at the beginning of their SD card, or the set of images, and then towards the end they just get tired. So, but all of that still doesn't tell us how people share images. It tells us how people share images. It doesn't tell us that given a set of images that we found on social media, what was the number of animals that they saw there in the first place? So we want the inverse problem. And so it turns out that rather than estimating individual biases at every step and trying to have a good probability sort of for whether an image is going to be shared, the better way to go is to aggregate all of it and look at it as distributions, and then using means to as really the estimating function. And that produced much better population estimates than sort of anything today, really. So the black thick lines here are the 4 official estimate points, and we used Flickr in this case. And the 4 points are the ones produced by our method. Notice, of course, it's not perfect. There's also a delay on social media. This is what we've discovered, that people actually, it takes time, up to about 2 years for Flickr to post images that people take. And so we're conducting a large study. This is a team of 14 high school students and undergraduate students that looking at 6 species across 4 social media platforms: YouTube, Flickr, iNaturalist, and Twitter, that span very different ways of sharing information. And so we're looking at the differences across species over time and across platforms of how much people share, where the contributors are coming from, and how well do they cover the range and the populations of the species. So watch this space. The results are coming out this fall. And so hopefully I showed you that AI and data science allow us to go from pixels to science conservation and public engagement at large scale and high resolution over space, time, and individuals. It democratizes science if we do it right. And it truly takes a large village. It is a global endeavor. And I would like to thank my co-founders of the Wild Book Project, Jason Holmberg, Chuck Stewart, and Dan Rubenstein, as well as a large number of volunteers, and our funders, including Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation. Thank you.